It is episode 150 of Decoding Fox News, and I'm your host, Juliet Jeske. Each week, I watch and analyze a whole heck of a lot of Fox News, and then break it down. I watch all the Fox News you'd never want to, and that's the truth. This past week, it was 18 hours. Let's get right into the headline. Here we go. A celebration of corruption. Elon Musk and Eric Adams, two crooks in a pod.
It sure was, Lawrence. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think it's so refreshing to see, just that moment yesterday when you had Elon Musk and his cute little son in the Oval Office and Donald Trump sitting at the Resolute desk just watching on as his kind of protege tells the entire world what he's been up to that nobody else, no other president, there have been other presidents that have tried to do this, and only Elon Musk and his little team of whiz kids, very high IQ whiz kids, have been able to actually figure out what the government spends its money on and how it spends it and how it wastes it, the corruption, the abuse of the taxpayer money. And the fact that he's saying that he could save $1 trillion is truly amazing. And this is something that we are seeing open up in real time. And, Elon has just discovered this stuff. He's obviously come in to tell the president about it. He's in there. He was in there last Friday. He's obviously in there quite a lot. And Donald Trump really enjoys it, finds it very interesting and also very important. And Elon Musk has told him that this is the most important thing he thinks he will do. And he's basically neglected all his companies to come and spend 24/7 for no money, not that he needs it, being the richest man in the world, but to do the business for the American people.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is a great example of how Fox News is lionizing Elon Musk. And she hit all the talking points there, which is why I included that at the top there, where she was like, he's doing this out of the goodness of his heart. He doesn't need the money. He's the richest man in the world. Why does he care about money? It's kind of a backwards thing. You'd think, well, maybe the richest man in the world, how did he become so wealthy? Maybe because he's ruthless and he is obsessed with money. Anyway, just saying. But the whole and he and Trump get along so great, even though that press conference with Trump just sitting there and Elon Musk holding court was just humiliating for Trump. But they were just glossing over that. We'll get to that later. But yes, that was Miranda Devine. She's best known. She writes for New York Post. She's best known for the infamous book, bestseller, The Hunter Biden Laptop from Hell. She was like the first person on that story and really milked it for all it was worth. And she also got hit with a defamation suit and had paid out a huge settlement to a family because she called a disabled child an adult faking the disability. No kidding. And the family sued her and won a big settlement. So that's what she's known for. Yes. Anyway, so let's get into it. Here we go. Last week, the folks on Fox created fables about Elon Musk, the selfless tech warrior who was lowering tax bills for everyday Americans. The network promoted the idea that DOGE was only destroying wasteful woke programs meant to push deranged ideology. The network also completely glossed over how Elon Musk appears to be in full command of President Donald J. Trump. Miranda Devine and others downplayed Musk's press conference in the White House, where Trump sat silently while the billionaire towered over him in a t-shirt and baseball cap as he bragged about his perceived accomplishments with DOGE. Laura Ingraham singled out the first federal judge who issued a ruling to force the Trump administration to unfreeze billions in federal spending. Steve Doocy seemed to spill the beans on a deal New York City Mayor Eric Adams made with Trump to escape criminal corruption charges. Trump's border czar also joked with Adams on the set of Fox and Friends that he would make sure the New York City mayor didn't forget the agreement he made with the president. As ICE raids spread out over a city with a large foreign-born population, Mayor Adams can sleep comfortably knowing he's less likely to go to prison for allegedly taking bribes and laundering illegal foreign campaign contributions. Anyone watching Fox News exclusively last week might have missed out on Trump's takeover of the Kennedy Center, changes to a program that would have helped female college athletes, and a settlement for victims of the wildfires in Maui. So the shows I covered on Fox News last week were Special Report with Bret Baier on Monday, Fox and Friends, I got all 3 hours on Friday, The Five, and The Ingram Angle. So we just played Miranda Devine gushing all about how wonderful and selfless and amazing Elon Musk is, which is okay. This is another series of clips of folks from Fox doing the same thing. We're going to start with Laura Ingraham. This is from Wednesday from the Ingram Angle. And she, it's the same exact theme. He's the richest man in America, so how could he be corrupt? Which is completely backward, by the way. But here we go.
Now, we're supposed to believe that the richest man in America only volunteered for this thankless job because, what, he wanted to skim some off the top? Are they kidding me?
I love how the argument here is that the richest man in the world couldn't possibly want more money. I don't know. How did he become the richest man in the world? Maybe because he's ruthless and greedy. Just saying. Just saying. Next is Lawrence Jones, same day, Wednesday, Fox and Friends.
What is Elon gaining from this? He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the PR. He doesn't need the power. He doesn't need any of it. I think he's a guy that, exactly. I think this is a guy that loves projects.
So next up, Lawrence Jones is going to completely invent how the United States tax code works. And this has also been repeated on other shows that I don't cover, but I've noticed other people are clipping examples of this exact same theory this false theory that's being promoted on Fox News. And I'll explain as he says this. Here we go. Same day.
What they're pushing back, and we got a tracker now, because I know it's hard to keep up with this. You can see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little ticker right there. It's telling you the initiatives that are being cut, and it's showing you per taxpayer how much money you're going to be saving. So every time they hold, and it's going to go up throughout the day because they're going to uncover more as they go department to department. Every single day there is a protest. This is what they're preventing from you, the taxpayer, how much more money you would have in your pocket.
So let me just describe this a little bit since you can't see it. This is audio, not video. In the corner of the cryon at the bottom is a little ticker, and the ticker kept changing, and it would say like savings from DOGE, and it was sort of these made up numbers of how much Elon Musk allegedly was saving from the federal government by slashing and cutting and firing all these people. And then it would even say like individual taxpayer savings. Okay, that's not how our taxes work. The United States, and I'll explain. So they were basically implying that as Elon Musk was quote unquote saving money, which at this point would probably be a tiny percentage of a percent of our total budget, because USAID is only about 1% of our total budget. So even if you completely eliminated all of that, you're talking about 1% of the total budget. So you're talking about a tiny, tiny fraction of the total budget for the United States of America, which is enormous. So, okay, maybe we're up to 2%, maybe we're up to 3%. Let's be generous. It's still nothing. Many Americans don't even pay income taxes. They pay payroll taxes, which is totally different. But okay, we'll just break this down. So it doesn't matter how much the government spends in any given year. You're going to pay your taxes regardless. So this is how it works. Individual taxpayers do not pay a lower tax rate if the government spends less, because that's what Lawrence Jones just promoted. And again, I've seen other examples of it this week from other people who clip Fox. So this is what they're pushing. They are actually lying directly to their viewers' faces and saying the more money Elon Musk saves, quote unquote, the less taxes you'll pay. On what planet does this work? So income taxes are based on several factors, and this is just a handful. I could list dozens. Number of dependents, mortgage interest deduction, if applicable, sale of property or assets such as stock, interest income, any income outside of a W-2 form, business losses, charitable donations, deposits in traditional independent retirement accounts or IRAs. And again, that's just a handful. The tax code is quite complicated. So things that do not change the amount of taxes any individual owes. Here we go. The amount of money the government spends in a given year. Even $2 trillion in government spending would not change the tax code. What would lower taxes? Only Congress can cut or raise taxes by passing a bill that makes changes in the tax code. That's it. They're just lying. They're just lying. The whole point of finding all this waste, fraud, and abuse, or so they claim, and cutting spending is to pay off a huge debt, which is what's accumulated over years and years and years. Most tax experts would tell you that that debt is a result of irresponsible tax cuts that favored the most wealthy. I'm not kidding. I could go into this. I don't have time to right now because we've got a lot to cover. But the idea that Elon Musk is going to cut stuff and then you this year will have a smaller tax bill is complete nonsense. That's totally made up. It's invented. There's no truth to it. Truth is on another planet as far as that's concerned. If you make $60,000 a year, you have a little bit of mortgage interest deduction, and you have 2 dependents, your taxes are probably going to be about the same year to year, roughly, give or take. You're not going to have major changes. And certainly, the only way you are going to have major changes is if Congress changes the tax code. So this week, I'm using a lot of clips from PBS because I think they did such a great job, because we had Fox News in Fantasyland making up stuff about taxes, making up stuff about Eric Adams, which we'll get to later. It was just on a planet that I mean, just like floating around, just making stuff up, pulling totally their own reality. And then PBS is completely grounded on this earth and just coming out with facts, just bam, 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 bam. This is from the same day, Wednesday. This is Laura Barone Lopez, the White House correspondent for the PBS NewsHour. And she breaks down specifically how Elon Musk stands to benefit from all of these DOGE cuts. And again, DOGE is the Department of Government Efficiency. Here we go.
How much do Elon Musk's companies make from his federal government contracts?
Elon Musk owns 6 companies, including X, the social media site, as well as Neuralink, the brain implant company. But the 2 that benefit the most from government contracts are the rocket ship company, SpaceX, and Tesla, the electric car company. And in all, Musk companies have been awarded more than $13 billion in government contracts over the last 5 years. That includes $3.8 billion in government contracts awarded in 2024. And a lot of those contracts are with the Defense Department and NASA, Jeff. And Musk's Defense Department contracts are estimated to be in the billions. We don't have that full number, given that some of those details are classified.
More recently, Elon Musk and his DOGE allies have targeted the FAA and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. How does his work there present a conflict of interest?
President Trump has said that Musk has free rein to slash spending as well as the workforce. So first, with the FAA, they regulate SpaceX. And last fall, they proposed that SpaceX should be fined in more than $600,000 for licensing violations. The FAA is also currently investigating SpaceX for some safety violations. So again, potentially damaging some of Musk's businesses. Now, with the consumer watchdog CFPB, Musk has called for its elimination entirely, posting on X, RIP to CFPB. And Musk and his team are leading the efforts to dismantle that consumer watchdog. The White House recently ordered for all work to stop there. So why is this a possible conflict for Musk's personal interests? Well, for years, Musk has been trying to turn X into an everything app. That includes a digital wallet for people to send money to each other. And that digital wallet, known as X Money, is expected to launch later this year. CFPB is the main federal financial regulator of digital payment systems like that. And so Musk's X Money business would stand to potentially benefit from a weakened CFPB.
So that was Laura Barone Lopez doing an amazing job there in a very short period of time. I love how she got so much information out. That's about 2 minutes. The full segment was about 6 minutes long, and I did cut it up and rearrange it a little bit so I could manage to get 2 clips online because the limit on Twitter is 2 minutes. 2 minutes, 20 seconds. So she just did a great job because it's very specific. She pointed out the number of companies he had, the agencies, and how he will be directly affected by these agencies going away or being defanged. Excellent job. And just a complete stark contrast to Fox that's making up things about how Americans pay taxes and creating a complete fantasy about Elon Musk. So what's funny is that their argument is he's so wealthy he's uncorruptible, which is laughable because I think one thing anyone over the age of 25 has learned, and really probably a 5-year-old has learned, there's no limit to greed. No limit to greed. How did he become the wealthiest man on earth? Was it because he was a kind, benevolent soul or because he was ruthless and cruel? I think we're beginning to figure this out. Yeah, especially considering he does, Nazi or things that look like the Nazi salute, I'll say that. And, praises extremist political parties in Europe. And hey, his latest baby mama, this is kind of off topic, but the latest woman that allegedly had his baby, which is now 5 months old, also got fired from her conservative think tank job for posing in a photo with Nick Fuentes, a known neo-Nazi. There's more evidence here that Elon Musk is a complete and utter scumbag. But anyway, I think there's plenty of evidence, but we have to pretend that he's he just loves America and he doesn't care about himself at all, whatever. Okay, so going with this theme of no limit to greed, we're going to switch topics to the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. Now, this was just appalling. Last week, the Department of Justice filed a motion to dismiss corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Acting U.S. Attorney for Manhattan, Danielle Sasson, wrote a scathing letter to U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, repeatedly urging Bondi to reverse course on dropping the criminal corruption case against Adams. The motion to drop the charges against Adams was signed by Deputy Attorney General Bove, Edward Sullivan, a veteran public corruption prosecutor, and Tony Bacon, acting chief of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. But this was after 7 other Justice Department lawyers refused and resigned in protest. So they refused to sign it and they resigned. That's a lot of lawyers to quit. And that's hard because you're walking away from a job not knowing where you're going to end up. In the letter, Sasson repeatedly suggested DOJ leadership, including acting Deputy Attorney General Bove, were explicitly aware of a quid pro quo suggested by Adams' attorney, saying Adams' vocal support of Trump's immigration policies would be boosted by dismissing the indictment against him. So basically, Eric Adams would play ball with Trump and his mass deportation plans for New York City, home of 8.3 million people, if they let Adams off the hook for these bribery and money laundering charges and other things that he's accused of. Just outrageous. So if you don't know what quid pro quo is, I'll explain. It's a favor or advantage granted or expected in return for something. Quid pro quo is a Latin term that's used in law. At least I assume it's Latin, and I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. Haha, I just looked it up, and it is indeed Latin. Okay, short little story. When I was a little kid, I did very well on standardized tests, except for one, literally one thing I didn't do well on, was always deficient in, to the point that I was singled out for this, and they were basically running experiments on me, kind of, at my Catholic school that was oppressive and horrible. I had difficulty spelling as a child. I just really couldn't, for whatever reason, I could read anything, but I just had difficulty spelling. So they made a big deal out of this. And now as an adult, I figured out what the problem was. I'm great if it's following the rules of phonics and it follows the rules of English. Where I fall apart is if it is a French word or a Latin word. And now I know this because when I'm struggling with a word and I'm like, why can't I get this? Where can I get this? I look it up and I'm like, it's Latin in origin. And then I slam books down and scream and huff and... No, I'm kidding. But no, it does. It's Latin and French because they don't follow the rules. Anyway, I'm all about rule following. Follow the rules. So we're going to move on to Eric Adams again. We're back to this quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. That alone is a tongue twister. This is Steve Doocy giving away the game. I couldn't even believe these clips. I had 2 examples of this one. 2. He said this twice, almost verbatim, in the same Fox and Friends 3 hours. And I was like, which one do I pick? Which one do I pick for the podcast? So I think this is the better one, but this is just outrageous what he says. Here we go.
The cover of the New York Post, though, is the big story that everybody's talking about regarding Mr. Adams, and that is, you see, feds drop weaponized case against Adams so he could fight migrant crime. We need him alive. But down in the corner, see that plus? Prosecutor resigns in protest. That is an image of Danielle Sasson, and she's the interim U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. She did not think that she should be ordered by the Department of Justice to drop the charges, so she resigned and essentially said they dropped the charges for quid pro quo. We'll drop your charges, but you've got to help us with the migrant crime in New York City. She quit, and then 2 people in the public integrity unit at the DOJ quit, 3 others after that. So the whole suggestion is this was a deal that Adams struck with the Trump administration. Okay, we're going to get you off the hook, but you've got to help us. And that's why it would be interesting to have been the fly on the wall yesterday at that meeting with Tom Homan. You know, we can refile those charges anytime we want, so you better help us.
So that very much sounds like Steve Doocy is fully embracing the concept that Eric Adams struck a deal with Donald J. Trump so he would stay out of jail. And he's basically like, here you go. Here's the city of New York. Bring in ICE and, deport as many people as possible. Now, why this is especially insane for a city like New York City. So New York City, about 30% of the population here is foreign born. There's just tons of immigrants in New York City. Some, are just here for work and they go back to Europe or they go back to China or they go back to wherever they're from, various places all over the world. And some are, permanent residents. They live here. They've lived here for decades. So it just depends. But there's also, there's just a lot of people. When you walk around New York City, you will hear various languages. You will see people from every corner of the world. 30%, again, of 8.3 million people foreign born. So that's a lot of people who basically, I'm just going to spell it out, speak Spanish, look Latino, and are going to get harassed by ICE. Many of which are legal citizens and have done absolutely nothing wrong. We have a huge Puerto Rican population here. Those are American citizens. They are born American citizens, and there have already been instances of these people being harassed. So this is what Eric Adams did to this city that he's supposed to be in charge of. He just said, come on in, ICE. We used to be a sanctuary city, but who cares? Meanwhile, there's this whole other strata of New York City government called the City Council and assemblymen, and there's a lot going on with New York City government because it's a huge city. There's a huge government, and Eric Adams is acting like he's Trump. He's acting like a wannabe dictator. So this is outrageous. And what happens in this scene, and I'm going to paint the picture, is they have the curvy couch on the set of Fox and Friends, and Eric Adams comes out with Tom Homan, the border czar, who is said repeatedly absolutely ruthless statements about rounding people up, arresting elected officials who don't agree with him, arresting people who don't, play ball with him, which he fully intends to do. He said this, and they're just sitting on this couch laughing away. Now, this next statement comes at the very end of an interview that went on for almost 22 minutes, and this is a throwaway by Tom Homan because they're sort of discussing this. Is this a quid pro quo? And Eric Adams is like, no, of course not. And then Tom Homan says this right at the end. And this clip was so outrageous that they even played it on PBS. Oh, yes, they did. Here we go.
You are sitting today talking about the new alliance between ICE and Adams. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Alliance was never severe.
Yeah, and if he doesn't come through,
You're up early anyway.
if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City, and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?" So,
And I want ICE to deliver. And I want ICE to deliver. We're going to deliver for the safety of the people of this city. Let's focus on every American in New York should have the right to have an opportunity and survive in this city.
We're going to hold you to that.
American first. Thank you. Time to do.
So that's kind of a messy audio clip. It's because people are speaking over each other. So I'm just going to read what Homan said directly from the transcript. Here we go. This is what he says. So again, they're literally about to get off the sofa and walk away. And Homan says this. If he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be up in his office, up his butt saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to? sounds like quid pro quo to me. And then Adam starts laughing, ha 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 ha, because the joke is they can renege on this deal at any moment, and the charges against Adams can go slapped right back on him. So Trump played this perfectly, along with Pam Bondi, to make Eric Adams like their little puppet. He'll do whatever they want. And they actually said, we want him to help with immigration, so we can't put him under criminal charges. He's accused of taking bribes from Turkey and taking illegal campaign donations and funneling them through various channels so he could still get the money. That's totally illegal. It's totally, completely illegal. Outrageous. And again, I'm going to stress this because I brought this up today when I was talking to some students at Duke. I got invited to talk to a class at Duke, which was a lot of fun. And one of the things that I said is Fox will tell a story and, that's almost true, and they just leave out a detail. So again, and I've said this a few times, the investigation into Eric Adams started in 2021. Eric Adams started criticizing Joe Biden in 2023 over immigration, and Fox has turned that into Eric Adams criticized Joe Biden, therefore he got investigated by the FBI. No. The investigation was 2 years old at that point because the shenanigans he was pulling with Turkey and people in Turkey were giving him money started much further back than even 2021. So that's what we're dealing with here. Okay, now we're going to move on to how PBS covered this exact same story. And again, this is Jessica Roth of Cardozo Law School. That's affiliated with NYU, I believe. And she just basically briefly breaks this down. And she's talking to the other voice you're going to hear is Amna Navas, who's one of the co-anchors of the PBS NewsHour. I should have said earlier, the other voice that you heard with Laura Barone Lopez was Jeff Bennett. He's the other co-host co-anchor of the PBS NewsHour.
Let me ask you about another part of that letter Danielle Sassoon sent to the Attorney General Pam Bondi, in which she's saying Mayor Adams' lawyers are essentially asking the DOJ for what amounted to a quid pro quo, arguing his case should be dropped so he can carry out President Trump's immigration agenda. Is that what it looked like to you here, a quid pro quo? I mean, where is the legal bar or burden of proof there?
Well, at a minimum, it looked like an extraordinary abuse of prosecutorial power. Whether it was exactly a quid pro quo or not, what's very clear in the initial memo from Mr. Bove directing the dismissal is that the reason for the dismissal had nothing to do with the merits of the case and was instead intended to leave Mayor Adams unfettered to pursue the president's immigration agenda. And it said that the charges could be reinstated at a future date, very clearly leaving hanging over Mayor Adams' head the threat of reindictment if, in fact, he did not comply with the president's immigration agenda and fell out of favor with the administration. So at a minimum, it's clearly improper and an abuse of the prosecutorial function.
One of the reasons why I wanted to use that clip so badly is just so great to hear a lawyer explain this, because she's going to do a much better job than I am, even if I read 10 articles by lawyers, because they just understand this jargon, they understand how to explain these things. And she just did it so succinctly and perfectly. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. What a great clip. So, yes. And at this point, I should give a shout out to my sponsor. And who might that sponsor be? If you're a regular listener of Decoding Fox News, you know that it's the listeners of this podcast and the readers of my newsletter. That is right. I am 100% crowdsourced funded, which means I have no large donor. I have no large benefactor. There's no sponsorship, no grant. Nothing. It's hundreds of people basically paying $5 a month or $55 for the year, $168 for a founding member, and then people have various levels on Patreon. So if you want to become a paid subscriber, it's the only way I survive. You can go to my Substack for Decoding Fox News or my Patreon for Decoding Fox News. Or if you can't afford to, share the podcast, share the newsletter. That also helps tremendously. It helps me build my audience. I also want to say a quick note, because I always forget to tell people to do this. You can also give me a good review on Apple Podcasts if you can, or anywhere where you hear my podcast. What's funny about Apple Podcasts is I never read the reviews, because it kind of makes me self-conscious and stuff. It's weird. You'd know if you did one of these things. It's an odd thing to go through reviews like that. There was one that was very funny that complained about my intro being a minute long. And tonight, I was like, I'm going to see how long that music plays before I start speaking. It's 30 seconds. So my intro is actually 30 seconds long of me talking, where I get out the number of I get the number of the podcast, the episode. I basically briefly tell you what it's about, hit the headline, go to a media clip. The reason why I don't open with a media clip is because it's Fox News. If you didn't know my show and you didn't know what I was doing and it opened with a Fox News clip, how many people would instantly turn it off? I mean, that's exactly why I don't do that. Because if you don't know what I'm doing and you just hear Jesse Waters, I mean, what's the chances that you're going to keep listening? I don't know. I don't think very high. Anyway, I thought that was funny. A minute-long intro. And I'm like, it's actually 30 seconds. But anyway, because I literally am looking at a timer when I do it. Anyway, so I thought that was funny. Another random thing that I also thought was funny about that is that I listen to other political podcasts, and almost all of them open with an ad. So you're waiting like a minute before you get to the podcast, and many times it's just like two people like, hey, it's the podcast. Hey, it's the podcast. And then they talk for 45 minutes, no media clips. That's it. So give me a break, okay? That's ridiculous. A minute-long intro. I'm like, somebody took a podcast class, and he's angry that someone who's not following the podcast rules is more popular than him. That's what I'm guessing. And I'm guessing it's a him based on, anyway, I'm just rambling. I don't really care. I thought it was funny. I was like a minute long. Oh my stars. Oh my stars. Okay, anyway, we're moving on to Laura Ingraham, intimidating judges. So the Trump administration has been hit with several lawsuits over its attempts to make sweeping changes to various government agencies. On Monday, on the Ingraham Angle, Laura Ingraham called out one of the judges who ruled against Trump. Her producers created a graphic that included a portrait of Judge John J. McConnell Jr., along with a bulleted list that included information about his background.
If one judge, is going to have the power to stop the Trump cleanup crew in its tracks, don't you think we should know a little bit more about him? And yeah, it's as bad as you would imagine. McConnell once served as treasurer of the Rhode Island Democratic State Committee, and he donated more than $100K to liberal Democrats, including to Biden, to Hillary, to the DNC, and a really hefty chunk of cash to the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee. The list goes on and on. So again, this is an unbiased jurist. This is someone who has the power, can keep scrolling, guys, have the power to do what? To issue a nationwide injunction and stop a duly elected president from doing what the voters elected him to do. It is a scandal.
So I just want to point out that Miss Ingraham never mentioned how the U.S. Constitution might play a role in the actions of the judge. No, not at all. So according to reporting by the New York Times, so this happened the morning of the clip that I just played you, Judge John J. McConnell said that the White House had defied his order to release billions of dollars in federal grants, making the first time a judge has expressly declared that the Trump administration is just obeying a judicial mandate. The ruling by McConnell in a Rhode Island federal court ordered the Trump administration to comply with the plain text of a ruling he issued on January 29th, included a restraining order which was meant to halt the administration's freeze of congressionally approved funds. So Judge McConnell ordered Trump to unfreeze billions in federal funding and issued a directive demanding that the government immediately restore frozen funding. The ruling was a response to the Trump administration's Office of Management and Budget, which issued a memo halting federal grants and loans. The freeze was meant to give the Trump administration time to evaluate each program to make sure it aligned with the president's agenda and policies. Nearly 24 states filed a lawsuit against the action. The restraint order meant to release the funding was filed on January 31st, 2021. So later, this is the same show, Monday, the Ingraham Angle. She invited on Senator Mike Lee. He's a Republican from Utah. And he also criticized the judges for ruling against President Trump. Here you go.
Because these judges are out of line. They don't have the authority to go in and commandeer the presidency and undo the election of November 2024.
So you have a Seattle judge, you have a D.C. district judge, Carl Nichols, who clerked for our former boss, Justice Thomas. You have a Boston judge, you have a Rhode Island judge, you have a couple of old Reagan appointees. You have a judge who came out for transgender inmates. You have another ruling on that was filed on behalf of pregnant illegals on birthright citizenship. So these are coming fast and furious.
So just want to comment quickly. She basically said somebody clerked for Judge Thomas, who's her former boss. Then she says 2 of them were Reagan appointees. So these don't sound like liberal judges to me. They sound like conservative judges. And it just seems like Ingram's trying to intimidate them a little bit by like calling them out by name, showing their photo on the screen as if they've done something horribly wrong by defending our Constitution. So I'm just going to play how PBS reported on this exact same story. Again, I'm using a lot of PBS this week, but I felt like I needed to because they did such a great job covering these exact same stories that Fox completely warped. So here is PBS, and again, this is from Friday.
One federal judge extended a restraining order against DOGE, that's that Department of Government Efficiency led by Elon Musk, barring them from accessing Treasury payment systems. So that restraining order is extended. There was another lawsuit where the Consumer Financial Bureau essentially was told that they don't have to delete. It was trying to prevent their full-on dismantling, which is being done by Elon Musk and other Trump administration officials. And the judge said that no CFPB employees could be fired. And another case brought by 8 fired inspectors general, the judge said that they would not issue any emergency action to reinstate those inspectors general, and that case is going to be ongoing. Then in a case challenging Elon Musk and DOGE's entire operation, another federal judge asked for more specifics and said that they would rule at a later date. All of that is happening, Jeff, as DOGE is growing its numbers. I was told by a source familiar with the situation that billionaire Joseph Gebbia, the Airbnb co-founder, is joining the efforts at DOGE with Elon Musk, and he was at the Office of Personnel Management today being onboarded.
And the administration is still moving forward with these firings across different government agencies. How expansive is this?
They're incredibly expansive. Last night into today, we saw an increase in the number of firings that are coming and targeting primarily probationary employees, people working in government for less than 1 to 2 years. We're estimating that more than 200,000 employees could be impacted. So when you look at it by the numbers, that's more than 5,000 at the National Institutes of Health and the Center for Disease Control, more than 1,000 at the Veterans Affairs, more than 1,200 at the Energy Department, and more than 3,000 at the U.S. Forest Service. And when it comes to those being terminated at the CDC, one of our sources told NewsHour's Murray Jacobson that at least 100 members of the Epidemic Intelligence Service are expected to be terminated very shortly. Those are disease detectives. If you watch Contagion, Jeff, Kate Winslet's character was a member of that EIS service. And then when it comes to the Energy Department cuts, some of those cuts are within the Nuclear Security Administration.
So again, that's the bright and amazing, intelligent, brilliant woman, Laura Barone Lopez, as she just goes bam, bam, bam through all of those. She just drops so much information and data in a well-organized, well-thought-out, brief segment there. I just love it. She just does such great work. I forgot to tell the kids, I shouldn't say kids because they're adults, but I'm old, so I call anybody under 30 a kid, really under 35. Really under 35 to me. I'm like, wow, you're so young. Anyway, I was born in the 70s. So, I keep dropping these bad reviews on iTunes, Apple Podcasts is what it's called. I don't even know what it's called. Apple Podcasts. Again, I have a 4.9 review, so I'm fine. 4.9 rating. But somebody said I had millennial humor, and I'm like, I think I'm obnoxious about being Gen X. Thank you very much. I think I hit you over the head with it. Millennial, I don't even, what is millennial humor? Sarcasm? Okay, anyway, the other one that cracked me up was, what was the other one? Somebody complained about the cats, and I'm like, how dare you? How dare you? My cats have a fan club, thank you very much. I know they do because you guys send them gifts, and it's crazy. And Odin is on my lap right now, and he's the all-black cat with a long tail. And yes, and then, of course, I get complaints about the impressions, whatever, I don't care. But for every complaint I get about 100 compliments, so I don't care. And I did this for the class. I'm going to do it now. Here we go. We're doing it. I got to get back from the mic. I have to get back from the mic, and then I have to go back and adjust the sound. That's how I have to do this. You know who I'm doing. I'm Judge Janine, and there's a large black cat on my lap, which I don't know why, because I don't have cats, I have dogs. And I love President Trump. He's just amazing. He's the greatest American who's ever lived. And now I'm just going to make something up and then throw a pen and talk about Oreos and maybe talk about cooking and then insult Jesse Waters because I'm Judge Jeanine and I need a glass of wine. Shut up. Okay, there you go. Hey, Kitty, what are you doing? My favorite compliment about Judge Jeanine is somebody said, and it was a man, that he does my impression of Judge Jeanine to his wife and apparently drives her crazy with it. And I'm all for that. I encourage you to do obnoxious Judge Jeanine impressions to your friends. Do it. Do it all day long. Apparently she thinks that it's great when people imitate her. So I'm going to imitate her even more. Here we go. We're moving on to stories that Fox News ignored. Every week I compare the hours I've watched on Fox News to 5 hours of the PBS NewsHour. The following list are stories that PBS covered that Fox News did not. And the source for all of these clips are the transcripts from PBS. So here we go. President Trump pardoned former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. The president already commuted his 14-year sentence for corruption during his first term. Politico reports that he's under consideration to be ambassador to Serbia. Romanian President Klaus Iohannis says he will resign after months of pressure as he was set to face an impeachment vote. Iohannis is term limited, but after Romania's top court controversially scrapped an election back in December, it also kept him in office until a new presidential election in May. In the face of protests and a growing number of lawmakers who've said his extended term was illegal, Iohannis said his impeachment process would have only caused more pain. Opening statements started last Monday in the trial of the man accused of stabbing author Salman Rushdie on a stage at a lecture back in 2022. 27-year-old Hadi Matar had pleaded not guilty to attempted murder and assault. Rushdie was stabbed more than a dozen times, leaving him blind in one eye and paralyzed in one hand. The Indian-born British-American novelist had been a target of death threats for years after publishing his 1988 novel, The Satanic Verses. In Hawaii, a $4 billion settlement for victims of the 2023 Maui wildfire can finally move forward. After months of legal delays, the state's Supreme Court ruled today that insurance companies may not take their own legal action against those blamed for the fires, including Hawaiian Electric Company. Insurers insisted that they had the right to do so in order to recoup money paid out to policyholders. Gotta love insurance companies. That is sarcasm. Okay, 27 religious groups are suing the Trump administration over a policy that makes it easier for immigration agents to carry out arrests at places of worship. Plaintiffs in the federal lawsuit range from the Mennonite Church to the Central Conference of American Rabbis to Unitary and Universalists, and more. The groups say their congregations are experiencing decreases in worship attendance due to fear of immigration enforcement action. They argue that violates their religious freedom, including the ability to minister to migrants. The Trump administration has not yet responded. You'd think religious groups suing over this would be on Fox's radar, but they ignored that. Here we go. Longtime Trump ally Steve Bannon pleaded guilty today to defrauding donors in a private effort to build a wall along the U.S. southern border. Bannon called the case political persecution as he left the courthouse as part of his plea agreement. Bannon will avoid jail time, but he is barred from holding leadership roles in any nonprofits or charitable organizations in New York. And I'll briefly explain this. They set up a nonprofit to build a private border wall, and they basically just scammed people out of money. So 8 government watchdogs are suing President Trump for abruptly firing them last month. The federal lawsuit argues that the inspectors general, who all served during Trump's first term, should get their jobs back. It states, quote, President Trump's attempt to eliminate a crucial and long-standing source of impartial, nonpartisan oversight of his administration is contrary to the rule of law. In Washington, D.C., the newly installed Board of Trustees at the Kennedy Center voted today to make President Trump its chairman. It comes days after Mr. Trump announced plans to overhaul the institution, and after he replaced the board with his own appointees. The board also voted to fire the institution's president. Deborah Rutter. She had initially planned to leave at the end of the year. The Trump administration is scrapping a Biden policy that aimed to regulate name, image, and likeness payments to college athletes under Title IX rules. The guidance required that universities treat those funds the same as athletic scholarships, and that would have meant paying out the money proportionally to male and female athletes. The Trump official called that guidance overly burdensome. Federal health agencies are restoring websites and data sets that have been forced offline due to a presidential order. That comes after a judge in Washington, D.C. ordered the content returned, saying their loss threatened the work of doctors and public health at large. The scrubbed material included information on HIV monitoring, contraception, and the enrollment of women in clinical trials, among other things. The site removals were apparently in keeping with an executive order from President Trump directing agencies to remove any indication of alleged gender ideology. A federal judge paused President Trump's executive order restricting gender-affirming care for transgender youth. A lawsuit was filed earlier this month for families with trans and non-binary children, saying their health care had been compromised by the order. Judge Brendan Hudson granted the hold while that case proceeds. He says Trump's action, quote, seemed to deny that this population even exists or deserves to exist. Minnesota Senator Tina Smith announced that this term will be her last. Smith said her decision was not political, but entirely personal. Her open seat deal is a blow to her fellow Democrats who already faced an uphill battle to retake the majority in 2026. Although Minnesota is a very blue state, they should be okay. A new study suggests that bird flu has silently spread from animals to some veterinarians. The Centers for Disease Control tested 150 dairy veterinarians across 46 states for antibodies to the virus. 3 of them were positive. None of the vets reported working with infected cows or having symptoms. The results echo 2 similar studies that found evidence of past infections in farm workers that went undiagnosed. In Missouri, an 86-year-old white man pleaded guilty today to the non-fatal shooting of a young black man who had rung his doorbell by mistake. Andrew Lester had been due to stand trial next week on charges of first-degree assault and armed criminal action. Instead, he pleaded guilty to second-degree assault and faces up to 7 years in prison. Ralph Yarl was in court today to hear the plea. He was 16 years old when he was mistakenly ended up at the Lester's house after mixing up streets where he was due to pick up his twin siblings. It's such a sad story because Ralph Yarl was such a sweet young kid. He was a good student and a musician and just a shy, quiet kid, and he gets shot by some crazy white man who gets paranoid about a black man at his door. Just horrible story. But Ralph Yarl's doing well. He's in college. He just bounced right back, and that's a good thing. Beautiful thing. Wish him the best. Next up, we have the top 5 topics. I should mention again, none of those stories were on Fox, not even a hint of them. There's a lot of overlap this week, though, so there wasn't as many. So here we go. Top 5 topics on Fox News compared to the top 5 topics on PBS. Starting with Fox. 27% of airtime was dedicated to DOGE, 11% Trump worship, 8% Democrats are terrible, 6% Trump tariffs, and 6% mass deportations. That sounds like Fox. Moving on to PBS. Number 1 was Ukraine war, 13%. Artist profile, 9%. DOGE, 8%. Eric Adams charges dropped, 5%. And Trump tariffs, 4%. Words used on Fox, and I got to get a little bit closer because I can't read this. Trump, 517. Elon Musk, 121. Biden, 116. Tariffs, 93. Ukraine, 63. Russia, 61. DOGE, 57. Gaza, 37. China, 36. Israel, 35. Crime, 33. Inflation, 30. Department of Education, 27. Economy, 13. And AOC, as in Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 6. Odin is running all over the place, making noise. It's crazy. So yes, my one note to you is if you haven't given Decoding Fox News a good review on Apple Podcasts, if you do, please mention Odin and Thor. They are the podcast mascots. The other funny review that was bad, I only read the bad one. No, I read some of the good ones. But again, I have a 4.9 rating. I'm not complaining. But this one made me laugh. The person was like, I love this show, but I hate the host. And I think this person may have thought I had a boss, because the way it was written was very funny. They're like, the content is amazing, but I hate the person reading it. I'm like, the person reading is the person who wrote it. So there you go. And the other content besides me, besides the host that you hate, is Fox News clips. So I think what you're really saying is that you love Fox News clips, and that's great. Maybe you should watch Fox. Anyway, I thought that was funny, because I'm like, what? That's just somebody. Again, I'm rated 4.9, so I don't think how much you think your like bad review is going to do to that. Not much. But anyway, that was a funny one. I was like, I don't even understand that, because it's a one-woman show. Anyway, both bumpers, I say one-woman show. I hit you over the head with it. Thank you for listening. That's the end of the podcast. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Decoding Fox News, you go to my Substack for Decoding Fox News. You go to my Patreon for Decoding Fox News. My paid supporters and paid subscribers get exclusive content. Last week, it was a video edit of one of those super long congressional hearings. I've got 2 more that are coming up. I will be going to a podcast conference on the air this week. It's in a different part of Brooklyn. I have no idea what to expect. I'm usually a total weirdo when I go to these things because my project is so odd. I don't fit in. People are like, what corporation do you work for? What's your team? And I'm like, me and 2 cats. Woo! I have a shoestring budget. How are you doing? I don't have a boss. I don't have an editor. You know, all the things that don't fit in. And they're just like, stare at me and they're like, what? And then they look me up and they go, why do you have so many followers? I'm like, why? I don't know. Ask them. Anyway, if you'd like to check out more of my work, you can go to Twitter, also known as X, because I don't call it X. You can go to Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, not so much on TikTok, and Facebook. I have a fan page. And that's it. You can also find a copy of this podcast. I forgot to give the one last week to them. Sorry about that. To Resolute, I'm so tired. Resolute Square, that's on YouTube. And that's about it. I will see you at the next podcast. And of course, Odin and Thor, my beloved podcast mascots, send their love. And again, give them a shout out wherever you can. Thank you so much. I'll see you at the next podcast.
Resolute Square.